But let gentleman at the back, quick one.
I think the economic legacy now, you're talking about Jamaica, which is spending more money repaying debt repayments than they are spending on education and health.
Exactly.
So how are the Caribbean countries going to move out from there when they're expected to do that? Talking about the freedom for countries.
And that cancellation of debt is one of the CARICOM demands, isn't it?
That's one of the things they're arguing for.
And that would have a massive impact, would it?
It would do, but what we actually recognise, it goes beyond debt cancellation because the debts are illegitimate debts. It's debt repudiation. The people of the Caribbean didn't owe anything, and the reason why these debts were imposed on them is in itself a legacy of colonialism that must be corrected.
Daniel Hannan.
Well, I just wanted to come back to Esther's point that Britain was different. That, OK, we're all descended from slaves, the Greeks did it, the Romans did it, but the UK...
The Muslim slave trade, of course,
Muslim slave trade,
15 million people were enslaved.
Yeah. Between 11 and 17 million Africans traded by Muslims. But let's just focus on what makes Britain different. What makes Britain different is that we extirpated this disgusting business. We were pouring energy, not into just the abolition in our own territory, but in wiping out the slave trade. Even when we were in a life-and-death struggle against Napoleon, we were diverting ships and men to stamp out the transatlantic trade, from which we derived no diplomatic gain, no profit, because it was the right thing to do. So if Britain is different, it's different in a very good way.
It's not. Actually, we talk about abolition, but we don't talk about Britain's commencement into this whole process of enslavement.
That's because we didn't commence it.
1562.
That's because
what
we didn't commence it. It had been happening forever.
1562. All the wealth that was generated that helped to make Britain great, so-called, the British Empire, all of this came from enslavement and colonialism and ill-gotten gains. And it links to this modern discussion around inequality and the huge gap between the nations, not only in terms of Britain and Europe, but also the rest of the world, and in particular, Africa and the Caribbean.
Look, Britain didn't invent the slave trade. There was existing slavery going on in Africa, which had been going on forever, as it had been going on in Europe.
It was not the same.
What made us different is that we stopped.
No, it was not the same. That is a falsification of history. What we had in Africa was systems of pawnship and forms of serfdom,
so it was
which
very
was
different.
Very different.
What about? So it's different from, because when this is such a fascinating debate when people have it. But one of the things which is always brought up is what about those of Irish extraction, for example, and 1,000 years of British history? Do they have an intergenerational transmission of trauma? And also, the British working classes, whether it be the Highland clearances or whether it be the mills, the dark satanic mills and the mines, the working class struggle. Do those people have intergenerational scars?
Yes, and in fact there are people from within those communities who argue that. This discussion around the impact on Irish people...
Do you think they're right?
Yes.
So
reparations is not just about people of African descent. No, what it means is that we have to understand our distinct histories and what has happened to specific groups. It's not just about putting it all into the pot and say we're all oppressed. We're all oppressed differently.
Do we all have victimhood, though?
Well, no, it's not about victimhood. It's about recognising what has happened and how do we repair the damage, which is what, incidentally, the term reparations means. How do we repair damage? It's not about compensation.
Francis Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of Irish extraction.